So for our main course, we're going to make a risotto dish. We're going to use leeks, we're going to use asparagus, and we're going to serve it with chicken. So I think a lot of people get intimidated by risotto. You don't have to, just follow the process. But first things first, we've got to get the chicken going. I want to make this dish in less than 25 minutes. So great for a dinner party. It's not expensive. I'm using chicken thighs, not chicken breasts. So we're saving a little money there. Season it up with a little bit of salt and pepper. Then we're going in a little bit of oil into the pan, not too much. And we're going to get that skin nice and crispy. And while we're doing that, we've got our stock. We're going to get our stock going. Remember, one of the great things about being frugal and sustainable is about reusing everything. So I've already pre-prepped my asparagus, took off the rough ends. I'm not just gonna discard them. I'm gonna throw them into my stock pot. Just gonna give a light bit of flavor to my stock, just to enhance the asparagus component. So why do I love chicken thighs? I actually cook so much more with chicken thighs than chicken breasts. I think they have so much more flavor. Good rule of thumb, a chef I used to talk to or work for way back when, Michael Smith, always talked about, the breast is not a well-used muscle. So tends not to have a lot of structure and fat to it and not a lot to it in flavor. So where you go in an animal that's used more, tends to have more flavor. I've left the bone in. Bone will give a little more flavor too. So we're going to let that kind of saute for a couple minutes. We want to get that crispy. It might take 4 to 5 minutes. We'll flip it over, and then it's going to shoot into the oven for about 15 minutes at 400 degrees. That's the perfect time because when that chicken goes in the oven, that gives us the absolute right amount of time to cook our risotto. So when we cook our risotto, we're going to use arborio rice. Now, traditionally, Northern Italy, it's arborio or cannaroli rice. Now, cannaroli is a little more rich in starch than arborio, but arborio you can find in any grocery store. It's really good. Don't use any rice. Don't use any long grain rice. You want a short grain rice, specifically with lots of starch. That's what gives all that creaminess to the dish. You can see the skin's getting nice and crispy. We're going to flip those over, and then we're going to work from the same pan. We're going to keep all that flavor. Now, as for the wine, when you're thinking about, okay, you got chicken, you got risotto, what are you going to pair that with? Well, I'm going to pair it with a glass while I'm cooking because that's how I cook. But, so, again, think about the character of that dish. You got creamy risotto, lots of flavor, and then chicken, which is not that heavy. So, we can go two ways. We could go Suave Classico, which is the traditional pairing in Northern Italy. But I think with the chicken, it's a little richer than that. So again, our Chardonnay we serve first course can carry us right through the second. Or we could go to something savory and red and light, not too heavy. Frappato from Sicily in Italy. A lighter style Barbera from Northern Italy. Or even Pinot Noir. So if I finish the Chardonnay, I'm going to open a ball of red. So I guess you'll know at the end of this show if I've downed the first bottle between appetizer and main course. Okay, so our chicken is good. Now we've got a pan ready to go. We're going to turn down that heat a bit. We're going to chicken is in the oven. Now we're going to start our risotto. So we have 15 minutes plus another 5 minutes for it to rest. That gives us the perfect amount of time to cook risotto. A perfectly cooked risotto takes exactly 15 to 18 minutes. So I do equal parts butter and olive oil. You can just do butter as they might do in Northern Italy. But I like to reduce the smoking point a bit by adding the olive oil. Then we add our leeks. If you can't find leeks, you can use shallot, white onion, and we're going to saute this down. It's going to take 3 or 4 minutes to cook down. While we do, I'm going to have a glass of wine because that's what I do. Um, Now, the wine can go into the pan too. A nice connection between flavor of the wine and flavor of the dish is to use the same wine when you're cooking as what you're drinking. This one's a little expensive. Normally, I would add something cheaper because really all we're looking for by adding wine is to add an acid component. So really, don't break out your big $50 Chardonnay to cook your risotto. This is when you get something from a box. So let's say the leeks wilted down a bit. They're not quite there, but for our purposes for today, they've hit that level. This would only take a moment or two. So now is when we hit our rice. So this is our arboreal rice. I've got a cup. Now this is important. So you want to stir your risotto, your rice, because you want that rice to get covered in the oil and in the butter. It kind of helps to separate the kernels, so they don't get all gloopy on you. So there's a few little processes in cooking risotto that are important, and toasting your rice is it. So 1 to 2 minutes, a little bit of toast. Then we're going to add our wine. So this is now the next kind of evolution of our cooking process. So wine, so about a quarter cup. And what you want to do is you want to cook that down till the liquid is almost gone. And this, we're just trying to take out, kind of coax out the starches of the rice. So this whole process is about adding a little liquid, I'd like to say making the rice kind of beg, make the rice beg for more. If you don't, it just ain't right. So my Italian mama would kill me if I did not do risotto right. She's not really my Italian mama, but I do have some friends in Italy, and they would kill me if I didn't do this right. So we're going to let that evaporate. And then what we're going to do is add a ladle full of stock or a spoonful of stock at a time. So as soon as this evaporates, which will be just a second, we're going to add a ladle full of stock. Okay, so the liquid's all evaporated. Now we're going to add a little stock. So I'm going to about a cup at a time. And this is all it is just keep repeating. Now, off camera, my cameraman asked, why couldn't I add red wine? Well, red wine you can, and there is a great tradition of doing red wine risotto in northern Italy in a place called Piedmont. But I don't want, for a fresh dish like this, to have the pink color and the purple tones of wine in my risotto. So it's really for color I don't want to use red wine. White wine does tend to have a little more acidity to it, and the fruit flavor is a little more diminished. We don't really want to overpower the asparagus and the leeks. So red wine, perfect. If you want to make a red wine risotto, I would just say make it with mushrooms or truffles or a little gamier food like a pheasant or quail or that kind of thing. So all we do, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So then you're going to ask yourself, how do I know when it's done? Well, in theory, in 15 to 18 minutes, we know it's going to be done. But we know when I pull my spoon back and it just kind of very slowly comes back together, that's when the risotto's done. This is obviously just still in the cooking process. So we'll see that at the end. And you might be asking about when the asparagus goes in. That's only with the last kind of spoon bit of stock, because it's going to take a very short amount of time to cook that asparagus. last step. So we're hitting about the 14-15 minute mark. I'm adding my asparagus. Then we're adding the last of the stock. So I'm just going to filter out all that kind of good leftover asparagus and leek tops that I had used to kind of add a little more flavor to the stock. So that's just going to cook down for a second. We're going to add about a 1/4 cup of Parmesan cheese, or a little more. You don't have to add a pat of butter. Some people say yes, some people say no. Butter makes it better. So we're going to add that in too. So really, now, this is going to be about 2 minutes to being done. I'm going to pull out my chicken from the oven, and we're going to set this up as our main course. This risotto looks like it's done. It really slowly comes back together. That's a good sign. Gonna take this off the heat because it is finished. We want to always, of course, do a little taste test to make sure it's cooked. It's got what the Italians would say is al dente. It's got a little bite to it, which is what we want, nice and creamy. Seasonings there. I mean, I'm just gonna add a touch more parm because I didn't really add any salt. You know, this is the Parmigiano. The Parmesan is acting as salt. If you can't find Parmigiano Reggiano, use Grana Padano, Pecorino. Any of those will work. So now I just have to pull out my chicken, plate this up. Okay, so chicken is out of the oven. On top of our risotto, we want to add a little extra splash of color. All I did is make the what we call a green oil, which is blanching parsley in boiling water for 20 seconds, taking it out, putting it into a ice bath, which is just ice water, taking it out of the ice water, putting it through a towel or a paper towel to get rid of all the excess water, and then combining it with a little bit of vegetable oil or olive oil. And you just get a nice little pop of color. And that's a super simple main course to make. And I eat my risotto. Mama would be proud. Glass of Chardonnay. That's a super simple but elegant main course for a spring menu. Ciao and cheers.